I made up some problem to go with this just so it can help you. So in the problem, I'm just going to give you that the object is at 2 times the focal point, so 2f. So DO equals 2f. And I'm going to solve it in 2 ways. One where it's concave and one where it's convex. And it's because there's one major difference between the two in the equations, because you're going to use the mirror equation in both. That changes all the answers. So for concave, you're going to use this. You're going to use 1 over DO plus 1 over DI equals 1 over f prime, where f prime is positive f because it's a concave mirror. So since DO equals 2f, 1 over DO is 1 over 2f. So all you do is plug that into the mirror equation and rearrange for 1 over DI. So you should get 1 over DI equals 1 over f minus 1 over 2f. Then in order to solve for 1 over DI, you just you factor out 1 over f, and you should get 1 minus 1 half. Which is 1 over f times 1 half, which is 1 over 2f. Now, obviously, it's going to be, what Mr. Khalil does, or mathematical thing, is since 1 over DI equals 1 over 2f, you literally just cross multiply. And you get DI equals 2f. If there's ever like a numbers in the numerator somehow, just you can cross multiply and then like divide by 2 or whatever numbers they are, just to get DI alone. Once you get DI, you just plug that into the magnification, the definition of magnification, which is negative DI over DO. And we have DI, which is 2f. So you plug that in for the top. So negative 2f, because the equation calls for it to be the opposite sign of what it already is. And the distance of the object is just 2f alone. So you simplify, and you should get just negative 1 for your magnification. To solve for the height, you just, for the magnification equation, it equals negative DI over DO, which also equals HI over HO. No negatives, no nothing, unless it already has the negative, like number-wise. So you should get, you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to do like a ratio. So HI equals over HO equals negative 1 over 1, because that's just the magnification. Then you're going to cross multiply again to get HI equals negative HO. And that should give you about everything for concave. For convex, you do the same process, only because the focal point is on the other side, since it's a convex mirror, it's 1 over negative f for the mirror equation. So instead of using 1 over f like you did for concave, for convex you use 1 over negative f, because that's where the focal point is. You do the same thing, you rearrange, so I'm going to subtract 1 over 2f to get 1 over DI equals 1 over negative f minus 1 over 2f. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take out 1 over f, you're going to factor it out to get negative 1 minus 1 half, which is negative 3 halves. Then you just multiply that by 1 over f. So it should be 1 over DI equals negative 3 over 2f. So this is where I told you about the cross multiplying, where you're going to have to rearrange. So you cross multiply, and you get a negative 3 DI equals 2f. And then you're just going to divide by negative 3 in order to isolate DI, because that's what you're trying to solve for. So ultimately, you should get negative 2f over 3. And that's just the distance of object. You're going to do the same process for magnification. You're going to do negative di over do. So it's the opposite sign of what di is. So di is negative 2f over 3. So it's going to be the opposite of that, which is 2f over 3. Positive. And do, originally, as I said before, is just 2f. And just in case you don't know how to simplify that, because I get mixed up with the whole simplifying fractions, you do the whole common denominator thing where you get 1 as a denominator. So you multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 1 over 2f divided by 1 over 2f, which cancels out 2f here and the 2f here. So you get left with just plain 3. So that's your magnification. And then you do the same thing. Magnification equals 3, which equals hi over ho. And then you do the cross multiply. So 3 over 1 equals hi over ho. You cross multiply, you should get 3ho equals hi. And that should give you our answer.